Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
San Diego County and 4 local cities are on a federal list of so-called sanctuary jurisdictions. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll in for Maya Trabulsi. That list includes the state of California and many of its cities and counties. The Department of Homeland Security says these jurisdictions are not in compliance with federal criminal statutes. KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen says the announcement came as a surprise to local leaders.
This is going to be used as additional threats and fear tactics.
That's what San Diego City Attorney Heather Ferber says about San Diego being on the list of sanctuary jurisdictions. She's not surprised that many California cities are on the list, but says the list doesn't clarify anything.
To be honest, when you go and look at the California jurisdictions that are and aren't on the list, there's not a lot of rhyme or reason as to why somebody is included and some other city isn't.
That lack of clarity also puzzled Vista Mayor John Franklin. His city, along with Chula Vista, Santee, and the County and City of San Diego, are on DHS's list released late yesterday afternoon.
I think that's a simple mistake. The City of Vista has made its position clear. We're not a sanctuary city. And so I'm writing a letter to the president today and asking them to correct this simple error.
Vista contracts its policing to the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. The sheriff declined an interview, but in a statement, the department says it follows and enforces state law. SB 54 is very clear that local law enforcement will not enforce federal immigration law. Chula Vista Mayor John McCann is also surprised to see his city on the list. He says the city has not adopted sanctuary city policy, and its police force does not do anything to inhibit immigration enforcement.
And we are there to be a willing partner to get criminals off the streets.
McCann is also writing a letter to the Trump administration to get Chula Vista off the list. DHS says it will send notification letters to all jurisdictions on the list. So far, no local jurisdictions have received that letter. McCann is also worried about how being on the list will affect federal funding for local law enforcement.
It potentially could be millions of dollars.
Ferber says the city of San Diego, along with others, filed a lawsuit early on in this administration to protect federal funding for so-called sanctuary cities.
We prevailed and have an injunction for cities named in that lawsuit to prevent the federal administration from using sanctuary designation in whatever sense the administration believes that is, from withholding federal funds.
As for the county, Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer says in a statement, "We remain steadfast in our commitment to defend due process and protect our residents from indiscriminate and unlawful enforcement." Santee Mayor John Minto was also surprised by the city's inclusion on the list. He says Santee is not a sanctuary city, but says one good thing about this is that it shows the city needs to do a better job of communicating with DHS. In the newsroom, Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
There is a lot to unpack with this latest directive from DHS about sanctuary jurisdictions. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis is here to help us understand what this all means. Welcome, Gustavo.
Hello, John.
Hey, so why don't you start off by telling us what exactly is a sanctuary jurisdiction?
Well, the funny part of the answer is that we don't know. There is no legal definition for a sanctuary jurisdiction. I mean, I think generally speaking, the reporters, academics, lawyers, and politicians describe it as policies that limit cooperation between local and federal law enforcement when it comes to enforcing immigration laws.
Now, how did these local cities end up on the DHS list?
Another thing that we don't really know at this point. I mean, it seems kind of silly when you think of who got in and why. There's no real rationale. For example, Huntington Beach is on the list, and they have been pretty vocal and loud about resisting California sanctuary laws. Chula Vista is on the list. Chula Vista's never called itself a sanctuary city. They actually went out of their way to get a welcoming city declaration, which is slightly different, and even then they didn't renew it, so they don't have any declaration right now. So I think there's a lot of confusion about who was selected and why.
Yeah, Huntington Beach also fighting the state on housing policy, but that's a different story. Where did the sanctuary policies come from?
Well, kind of two answers to that question. One, there's a long history of sanctuary policies going back to the 80s and churches being sanctuaries. But more recently, this wave, the California Values Act, the California Truth Act, they're a direct response to the first Trump administration. If you'll remember, they are essentially California lawmakers recognizing that communities are safer when everybody, including immigrants without status, feel comfortable and confident calling the police. During that time in the first Trump administration, especially up in LA, there was a decline in 911 calls in immigrant communities. I specifically remember, and there's been studies about this, domestic violence calls went down. That didn't mean there was less domestic violence. That just meant people weren't reporting it because they were afraid that if they called 911, they might get deported. So in recognition of this dynamic, they made laws to prevent that from happening so that people do feel comfortable reporting crimes and cooperating with the local police.
What's going to happen next? Do you have any idea?
Oh, you tell me. I mean, no, it's like with a lot of these Trump policies, right? Tariffs, student visa revocations, the DOJ budget cuts. There's a big announcement made. There are several lawsuits filed, and then it plays out in the courts. I know in this instance, the State Attorney General of Connecticut has already said, we will sue the Trump administration if they come after funding over this. So I think expect that to happen. I think the one thing we know for sure is that nothing will change overnight. I think we need to wait and see and figure out how the courts handle this.
Gustavo Solis, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Today, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled a program that allowed roughly 500,000 immigrants to live and work in the U.S. can be suspended. The Biden-era program allowed certain migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela to be granted parole after arriving at the border. They would get the status if they had an American sponsor and passed a security vetting. President Trump signed an order to end the program. The legal questions centered on whether status could be revoked unilaterally or reviewed case by case. While the underlying case continues in the courts, the administration can now expedite deportations for those in the program. The Trump administration has announced plans to revoke visas from some Chinese international students. KPBS education reporter Katie Anastas says that could affect thousands of students at UC San Diego.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Wednesday that his department, along with the Department of Homeland Security, will, quote, aggressively revoke visas for Chinese students. At UC San Diego, that could impact more than 3,800 students. Celia Su is studying business economics. She says Chinese students have brought a valuable perspective to her international business classes.
Just a different perspective. We hear the same professors from the same companies coming in, but then hearing it from an international scale or just like a different perspective entirely is really refreshing once in a while.
Cognitive science major Wendy Tran says her international classmates have worked hard to study in the U.S.
It just rubs me the wrong way to kind of see them have like their visa or student visas like taken away or even threatened to taken away in the first place. Because like I know they've worked really, really hard to try to get to here where they are right now.
In a statement, the UC Office of the President said it was concerned about the announcement to revoke visas, writing, quote, Chinese students, as well as our international students, scholars, faculty, and staff, are vital members of our university community and contribute greatly to our research, teaching, patient care, and public service mission. UC San Diego says it has not seen any changes to its Chinese students' records in SEVIS, the federal database used to monitor student visas. That's where universities have previously discovered visa revocations. Earlier this week, the State Department stopped scheduling new visa interviews for international students. UC San Diego says it will continue to issue F1 and J1 visa forms in preparation for future interviews. Rubio said the State Department will also, quote, revise visa criteria to enhance scrutiny of all future visa applications from China and Hong Kong. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
Tonight, we get a mainly clear night. We've had less of a marine layer these past couple of nights. Temperatures falling into the mid-60s, but we're keeping our eyes on the tropics. Yeah, we're still watching Alvin as it's going to be working its way northward into Mexico, and that will have a little bit more moisture moving into the southwest. I'll talk more on how it could impact our forecast coming up.
If you have a State Farm home insurance policy here in California, you can expect your premium to go up by about 17% when you renew. This comes after State Farm applied for an emergency rate hike, saying it faced severe financial problems after $7 billion worth of claims from the LA fires. So it's spreading out those losses over its customers, and it's not just homeowners. Premiums for renters can increase by 15%. An Alpine resident told our media partner KGTV that his insurance has gone up from $500 to $1,400 a month in the past few years. And this next rate hike is making him consider leaving the state for somewhere more affordable like Arizona.
After 28 years, it might be time to just pack stuff up and get out of here. San Diego is a place I'd always love to call home, but it's one of those places that's becoming so hard to afford to call home that it's kind of pushing everybody away.
The rate hike takes effect for any policy renewed on Sunday or later. In a statement, State Farm also says it's going to pause its non-renewals through the end of the year, so fewer people will lose coverage. It's been nearly 5 months now since the Eaton and Palisades fires ravaged parts of Los Angeles County. To date, more than 5,000 properties have been cleared of wildfire debris. The California Governor's Office of Emergency Services says that amounts to more than 2 million tons of debris, or approximately 200 Eiffel Towers worth. But residents and researchers say they're concerned about possible pollution in the aftermath of the fires and the cleanup. Maribel Gonzalez takes us to Altadena.
At first glance, Tiprin Follett could be considered one of the lucky ones.
All I thought was we survived the fire.
Her Altadena home with its lush and manicured garden, seemingly untouched from the Eaton fire that ravaged this community in January. But
when the fire came through with the winds, it was so strong that it broke windows in the house and blew open doors. Arsenic and lead and asbestos and all of those things are covering my house.
Then the wildfire cleanup began, but just steps away from her front yard.
That is the golf course right there.
The Altadena golf course, partly burned in the Eaton fire itself, turned into a temporary site where vegetation, metal, and concrete from charred structures are received and processed.
What is that going to do to us? Will we be in a place that we can't leave, but we can't live in?
Safety is our #1 priority.
Brigadier General William Hannon from the Army Corps of Engineers has led the cleanup efforts for the Eaton and Palisades fires.
We use the wet method, so we keep all the dust down, and we want to keep everything down so we don't get that in the air. We have air monitors that are located on the 4 areas around the golf course here, and those stats are live streamed to the website.
Hannon said more than 400,000 tons of debris have been processed. As for what's not brought to the golf course,
the toxic materials are sorted at the properties themselves and are taken to a separate landfill.
In the Altadena neighborhoods, researchers like Mike Kleeman are working to understand the long-term effects of wildfires on human health.
This one happened where there's 18 million residents in the Los Angeles basin, and they were exposed both in the immediate disaster, but then also in the cleanup phase.
With air quality tracking equipment mounted to his electric truck, Kleeman is tracking air pollution and toxins like arsenic and lead.
Once I know from these measurements what the particles look like, what the pollution looks like, I can then put that into a model and predict where the pollution will go, who will be exposed to how much.
But it will be years before researchers like Kleeman will scientifically understand the extent of wildfire exposure.
The best way to protect yourself, of course, is just to not be in the area.
For residents like Follett, it's not that simple.
I wish my house had burned. As much as I love my home and my garden, I could start to make plans to build. I could decide to move on to a new home. We are paralyzed in the unknown and the possible risks to us, to our neighbors, to our friends.
In Altadena, I'm Maribel Gonzalez.
The San Diego Police Department will soon limit public access to radio communications. The department is transitioning to fully encrypted radio channels starting Monday. SDPD says it's complying with the California Department of Justice mandate to protect the personal identifying information of all people. However, it says the public can still view many police calls through the department's online dispatch site. Historic elections this Sunday for our neighbors to the south. Mexico is electing judges for the first time in its history. KPBS video journalist Matthew Bowler explains what's at stake.
Yeah, it's a historic election.
That's Arlen Arriaga. She's a lawyer in Tijuana and the former president of Barra de Abogadas Maria Sandoval de Zarco, a 50-year-old association of women lawyers. Arriaga says it isn't hyperbolic to say Mexico is completely overhauling its legal system. Judges used to be appointed, but after constitutional changes, all Mexican judges, from the Supreme Court down to local jurisdictions, will now be elected officials.
This is the first time since since the judiciary power was born here in Mexico, that we get the chance to vote for our judges and ministers.
Arriaga says the whole legal system is starting fresh.
It was a constitutional change, and also the purpose of this president and the past president that presented the proposal of this modification was to avoid or to eliminate nepotism, corruption in the judiciary system.
Just in the state of Baja California, there are 172 judgeships open. The candidates, including existing judges and challengers, all are required to be attorneys. There are two ways to vote. You can choose an entire group of candidates pre-approved by a committee from Mexico's government branches, or you can vote for candidates individually. Arriaga says this can be confusing.
I have the privilege because I'm a lawyer and I have this information. What about the common citizen that don't even know if they have the experience to be part of this election on Sunday?
Winners will be sworn in on September 1st for an 8-year term. Reporting in Tijuana, Matthew Bowler, KPBS News.
More than 370,000 ballots are being mailed to voters in San Diego County's first supervisorial district. Registered voters should receive their ballot as early as this weekend or by next week. The special general election is July 1st. Early in-person voting begins on Monday at the Registrar of Voters office in Kearney Mesa, or you can vote by mail. You can find out more about the election to fill the vacant Board of Supervisors seat online at sdvote.com. Teens who haven't landed a summer job yet are not alone, and adults should know it may not be due to a lack of effort. Karen Kafa takes a look at why finding summer jobs is a struggle this season.
Teens are finding the summer jobs market isn't so hot. Employment firm Challenger Gray and Christmas forecast teens will see the lowest number of summer jobs added since 2010. At the same time, Indeed hiring lab economist Allison Srivastava sees more demand for those summer roles.
There is more interest in summer jobs than we have seen in previous years, so there is going to be some more competition.
Challenger Gray and Christmas says businesses may hold off on summer hiring as tariff whiplash fuels economic uncertainty, with the possibility of higher costs for goods and concerns about consumers pulling back, especially in areas like travel and tourism that typically staff up with young seasonal workers. Srivastava says their data shows businesses not really shedding employees, but also not eager to hire.
People are kind of frozen in place. You know, it's a little bit of a deer in the headlights situation. So there's only so long that can go on for before, you know, people have to start making business decisions, especially in those more short-run markets like summer jobs.
Areas where jobs do remain available are tried and true in-person summer gigs like offices that need administrative help and camps and recreation.
We haven't seen really a shift in necessarily the jobs that people are hiring for the summer, more of just like an overall decline. It's still very much camp counselors is a big one, lifeguards, things like that.
In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
As we take you through the upcoming hours, we are going to be keeping a close eye on the Pacific. But for now, really, our story is fairly quiet night for us. Then that storm system will bring clouds, showers, and thunderstorms to our area. Like I said, It's going to also try to pull up some of that moisture from the Pacific in form of Alvin, cooler into next week. We will not be getting the direct impacts from that storm system. That's the good news. It's going to be, again, the low that drives everything. So as we start off tonight, we're pretty quiet, 64 for the city. As you work towards Borrego Springs, 65 for your low. Here is Alvin moving northward into cooler water where it falls apart as it works its way into near, I should say, the Baja, but going into mainland Mexico. However, with its moisture, it's going to turn around this storm system. So this is a completely different storm system driving our weather and will bring us some showery weather. As it picks up Alvin and the subtropical moisture there, it is going to have more impacts across the interior southwest. But for us, it'll also enhance a little bit of that shower and thunderstorm activity around the low pressure system driving the system. I do think that for a lot of us, we're fairly quiet tomorrow, but we will have showers, maybe even a few rumbles of thunder in the area. You can see that over Mount Laguna as we head through the afternoon. Temperatures there in the upper 60s while the city holds on to the mid 70s. This is what it looks like on feature radar and satellite. So as we watch things throughout tonight into tomorrow, there's some of that moisture streaming in. The biggest slug of rainfall, though, the heaviest rain, doesn't really go until we get into really Saturday night and into Sunday. I think throughout the day Sunday, that's when we see at least the best chance of these showers and maybe even a few rumbles of thunder out there right into Sunday morning and throughout much of the day, potentially into Sunday is our best chance for afternoon thunderstorms. So we will watch for some extra clouds in the area. Temperatures in the mid 70s. Can't rule out a shower, maybe even towards the coast. So it's going to be more prevalent as you go towards the mountainous areas. As you work your way into the inland communities, we go back to the mid 70s by Monday. So there is cooler air in sight. In fact, one of the coolest days will be Tuesday on the board, but we're in the 50s for the mountains. Even with those showers and thunderstorms on Sunday, it should still get a little bit sunny at times. As we move to our desert communities, staying largely dry. Temperatures going back into the mid 90s, though, for Monday and Tuesday. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constancer.
Thousands of students graduated from San Diego State University this month, including 21 whose path to a degree included a prison cell. KPBS education reporter Katie Anastas brings us one of their stories.
I went to 5 different high schools in San Diego County. I was getting kicked out of school, going to juvenile hall, fighting, those kinds of things.
Chris Burrows never thought he'd live to 20 or 30 or 40.
I didn't really want to have anything to do with high school as far as education-wise. I went there so I could play sports, and then even that fizzled out once the streets got a hold of me.
He spent 14 years in and out of prison.
I was told before I went to prison one time by one of my elders that when you get locked up, nobody comes out the same. You're either going to come out worse or better. And I didn't want to come out worse.
While incarcerated, Burrows read a gardening magazine that sparked his interest in organic farming and sustainability. He started community college a few months later, then enrolled in San Diego State.
It's been very challenging, but Project Rebound has always been there for me. That was kind of like my hub here where I knew that I could go and get, just some good love from and support from people.
Project Rebound supports formerly incarcerated students like Burrows throughout their time at SDSU. They help with the admissions and enrollment process and offer academic and financial counseling. 14 California State University campuses have Project Rebound programs, including SDSU and CSU San Marcos. David Duran directs SDSU's program.
We've been growing at Project Rebound here at San Diego State the past couple of years by about 20 to 30 students each year. So we're at 90 students. This year we graduated our biggest class, 21 students. Half of those students are going to graduate school.
Staff meet potential students at jails, prisons, and reentry facilities. They also partner with a similar program for formerly incarcerated students attending California community colleges. According to California State University, less than 1% of Project Rebound graduates return to jail or prison. In California, nearly half of people released from custody return within 3 years. It costs more than $130,000 per year to incarcerate someone in California. Duran says it costs about $500,000 a year to run Project Rebound at SDSU.
When you think about the cost to incarcerate someone during the long term, it's like over $1 million during the course of like that general incarceration term, where here it's a fraction of that cost to help someone actually give back and contribute to society.
Part of that help is building students' confidence. While most CSU students are under 24 years old, most Project Rebound students are older.
The average age is about 40. years old, and so there's already an age gap. And so that is a big piece of just the mental, right? Trying to overcome that and telling yourself you're worth it, you can do it.
Now 50, Burrows says setting and meeting academic goals changed his perspective.
It's hard to think about doing crime when you're in a calculus 2 class, or biology class, and you're learning something, right? It's like it opens up doors that a lot of us, I can speak for myself, like I didn't want anything to do with school when I was a kid. I wasn't excited about learning any of that, but now that we made this commitment as adults, it's like we're excited to be doing these things.
Burrows walked in SDSU's commencement ceremony this month. He now has his bachelor's degree in sustainability. He's using that knowledge as founder of Garden 31. It's a nonprofit that provides education and job training in the agriculture industry. He says his classmates in Project Rebound are students SDSU can be proud of.
They know how to persevere and they know how to endure. And so when they come to a place like this, it's just like gratitude. Like, these walls are not gray. There's not bars, on that door right there. So, we had a commitment to do the time for the state of California, that the commitment that was given to us because of our actions. But now this is a choice. This is our commitment that we made as a choice in a positive fashion.
At Garden 31, he's helping other people make those positive choices. Next, he hopes to expand the organization's apprenticeship program for formerly incarcerated people and at-risk youth. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
That's great. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I'm John Carroll. Have an excellent evening and a wonderful weekend.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.